Hi, and welcome to Module A102 of the Information Lab and Data School's Alteryx Data Skills Training course. My name is Jacob Kilroy, and we're excited to have you here. In this module, we're going to learn how to use a number of different tools to prepare your data in Alteryx. We'll cover how to dynamically input and output multiple files, as well as how to parse, transform, and clean your data. You can watch this module as a standalone training or as part of our wider Alteryx Data Skills series. If you do find this training useful and would like us to help you and your team make sense of your business data, please reach out at info@theinformationlab.co.uk. You can check the description for links to this module's training materials and also for other links that will help you level up your data skills. Remember to click subscribe if you'd like to be the first to know about our new videos. Okay, let's get started. In today's training, we'll be using credit card transactions in Ireland for our data source, or rather, our data sources. The workflow we're going to build can be split into 5 different stages. 1. How to dynamically input our files. 2. How to parse dates and text fields. 3. How to transform and clean our data. 4. Reshaping the data. And 5. How to dynamically output to multiple files. With Alteryx open, let's go ahead and open our start file. Go to File, Open Workflow, Browse, and we can select Starter Card Transactions in Ireland. You can also open this workflow directly from your File Explorer. The first thing we're going to want to do is input our data. Navigate to the tool pane at the top of the Alteryx window. We're looking for the Input Data tool. I have this in my Favorites tab, but if you don't, navigate to the In/Out tab, click, and we can go ahead and drag the Input Data tool onto our workspace. We now need to configure the tool as there is currently nothing being input. In the configuration pane on the left-hand side, click on the drop-down caret next to the box at the top. Click Files, select a file, and navigate to where we have our input files. Select Credit Card Transactions 2020 April and click Open. We can now see in the configuration pane there is a sample of our data. If we run the workflow, we can see there are 420 records. We'll need to make a few changes to the tool to input all of our files dynamically. Let's make the configuration pane a little bit wider so we can see the entire file path. Where we have Credit Card Transactions 2020 April, highlight that 2020 April, including the underscore. You can go ahead and delete that. Make sure we're still preserving the .csv at the end. Just before that .csv, go ahead and add an asterisk or star. This is known as a wildcard. This means that the input tool will now look for any and all files in this file path called Credit Card Transactions, followed by any set of characters, and then again followed by .csv. If we click back on our tool, you'll notice that our preview is now gone. If we run the workflow, however, we can now see that there are 4,732 records coming from all the files that we want to input. Before we move to the next tool, there are a few other options we can play with in the configuration pane. The first is Search Subdirs or Search Subdirectories. This allows us to have the input tool to search any subdirectories or folders that exist in this file path. If you have any files tucked away in additional folders, this will allow the tool to find it. We can also choose to output the file name as a field. By default, comma-separated value files, or .csvs, use commas as their delimiters. If for whatever reason you have a different character used as your delimiter, we can go ahead and change that here. We will now move on to applying the custom date transformation. If we have a look at our data, we can see that we have files from April 2020, as we did originally, but if we scroll down, we can also see we have files from other months. As you can see, our data is in the format year, month, and date, but if we check the metadata tab, we can see that our date field is still a string. We would like to convert this to a date field. Navigate to the Parse tab in our Tools pane at the top. Click and drag the Date Time tool onto our workspace. Make sure our Input tool and the Date Time tool are connected. In the configuration pane, let's make sure that we are selecting String to Date Time format. The field we're looking to convert is daily. We can call our new column name Date. Dates come in a wide variety of formats, and the Date Time tool allows us to specify a custom type. If you're ever unsure on how to specify a certain date time format, you can go ahead and click on the small question mark here. This will navigate to the Alteryx documentation, which will show you all the different date time formats. The tool has several commonly used date time formats, but we will use a custom format that matches the string that we currently have. Select Custom, and navigate to the bottom of our configuration pane. Where asked to specify the format, enter the following: YY, month, DD. You'll see on the bottom, we have an example of the format we've just entered, as well as the desired output. If we click Run, we can see our new column. We can also check the metadata. We can now see that our new date field is a date. Next, let's drop in a select tool. Navigate to the Preparation tab in the top, find the select tool, and click and drag it onto the workspace. This tool lets us include, exclude, and reorder the columns of data that pass through your workflow. We can also change type and size of the data. Additionally, we can rename and add descriptions to our fields. We'll be dropping the daily field as we've already used it and we have our new date field. We'd also like to move this date field into the second position of our data. Right click and drag it up to where daily was. If we press run, we can see that daily is gone and the date field is now our second field. Although there are some fields that we will want to be numbers, we're going to refrain from changing them until after reshaping the data. We could also rename these credit card fields, but there are two things. One, this would be very manual, and we want to separate this into separate pieces of data. As you may have noticed, we have 4 columns that contain some values we're looking for. The field names themselves contain this information on whether they are transactions, volumes, business, or personal cards. We will now use a few tools to clarify the column names. First, we need to transpose these 4 columns or pivot these 4 columns to rows. This will allow us to solve the issue with renaming and passing the data out of the titles in one go. Let's grab ourselves a transpose tool. Navigate to the Transport tab in the top of the Tools pane. Find Transpose and click and drag it onto our workspace. In the configuration pane, the key columns are those that we want to remain untouched during the pivot. Let's select statistic code, date, metric, and unit. Our data columns are the ones we want to pivot. Make sure all the credit card columns have been selected. If we were to deselect one of these fields, what will happen is that field will be dropped from the data entirely. Let's go ahead and run the workflow. We can now see that our fields have been pivoted into a single column, name, with our values in the column named value. We now want to split our name column, separating the first part containing whether it's transactions or volumes, and whether it's business or personal cards. We can see that there are 3 underscores separating these details, but to simplify things we need a single delimiter. Let's go to the Preparation tab in our Tools pane and find the Formula tool. Click and drag that onto our workspace. The Formula tool can create new columns, update existing columns, and use expressions to perform a variety of calculations or operations. We want to replace the triple underscore with a single pipe delimiter in our field. Let's go to our configuration pane and select a column. We're looking for name. Enter the following formula. Replace. The string we're looking to replace is name. The target we're looking for is 3 underscores. Ensure these are wrapped in quotation marks. And what we want to replace it with is a single pipe. In the data preview, we can see that the 3 underscores have been replaced with that pipe. We can also click Run to check our data. With our pipe delimiter in place, we're going to go ahead and split our name field into 2 columns. Navigate to the Paths tab in our Tools pane. Drag the text to columns onto our workspace. In the configuration pane, the column we're looking to split is the names column. The delimiter we want is the pipe, and we only want to split to 2 columns. We can leave all the other settings as is. There are a few other options here, such as split to rows and some advanced options to ignore delimiters, but we won't need them for this exercise. If we run our workflow, we can see that our name field has been split into 2 new fields. Name 1 and Name 2. As you'll notice, the text in Names 1 and Name 2 have underscores separating each of the words. We could use a formula tool to replace these, but instead we can use a multi-field formula tool that will allow us to apply formulas to sets of fields, not just individually. In this case, substitutions. Go to the Preparation tab, find the multi-field formula tool, and let's drag that onto our workspace. Make sure we're looking for text fields, and select fields name 1 and name 2. We don't want to create new fields, so we can deselect this Copy Output Fields and Add. If we did want to create new fields, we can leave this checked and select whether there is a prefix or suffix added to our new field names. For our expression, we're going to use the replace formula again. Instead of using name 1 and name 2 each time we want to create a formula, we can use the special field called current field. Current field refers to the fields that we want changed and have selected in the section at the top. Since we're replacing underscores, put in quotations the underscore, and for our replacement, we can put in a space. Let's go ahead and run this. And we can see that our underscores have been replaced with spaces. Let's drag this across to center our workspace a little. Next, we are going to extract a few pieces of information from names 1 and name 2. From name 1, there are 2 pieces of information we want to extract, whether they're credit or debit cards, and the type of metric being used, transactions or volumes. Let's get ourselves another formula tool. This time we're going to be creating 2 formulas. If you're ever unsure on what type of formulas or calculations you want to use, we can go ahead and click this FX button, which will give us a number of calculations and formulas that we can use for data types. We can click and expand each of these sections and see what's available to us. If you're ever unsure on the field names that are available to you, we can click the X tab, and this will show us all our existing columns and also a number of constants that we can use. First, we're going to extract a card type from name 1. Let's enter the name for our new column. We're going to call this card type. The formula we want to use is getWord. We're going to get it from name 1. And we're looking for the word in the first position. So we're going to go ahead and enter 0. The formula getWord looks for words in a field, and the number 0 here refers to the first position, as Alteryx counts from 0. We also want the metric type, so let's add another calculation. We'll call this column metric type, and we're going to use that same getWord formula. We're getting that data from the column name 1. And if we go back down to our data tab, we can see that the metric is in the third position. Since we know that Alteryx counts from 0, 0, 1, 2, 2 would be our third position. And we can see in the data preview that we are indeed getting that metric name come through. If we click run, we can see our new fields. Before reshaping our data, we can clean up a few columns that we no longer need. In the Preparation tab, click and drag a select tool onto our workspace. In the configuration pane, we can deselect name and name 1. We can change the data type of value to double, which indicates it's a number. And let's rename name 2 to interaction. So far in our training, we've learned how to dynamically input multiple files using the input tool. We've also used how to use the datetime tool to pass strings into date fields, and how to split fields using the text to columns tool. We've learned how to transform the data using the transpose tool, and we've also learned how to clean our data using select tools, formulas, and multi-field formula tools. Coming up, we'll look at how to reshape our data using the crosstab tool, and we'll also learn how to dynamically output our data to multiple files. If we have a look at our data and we hover over the value field, we can actually see that there are about 93% of rows which are nulls. We can go ahead and get these removed. Let's navigate to the Preparation tab in our Tools pane and look for the Filter tool. Let's click and drag that onto our workspace. Connect the tools up, and let's have a look at the Configuration pane. The field that we want to filter on is the Values field. And we can use one of the preset options to filter out the nulls. What we're looking for is the Is Not Null option. We can also create custom filters, but we won't need to do that today. If we click on Run, we can see that the number of rows we have is drastically reduced. We're only left with about 1,300 rows compared to the 18,000 rows we had before. There's one more tool we'll want to use before we pivot our data again. Let's go ahead and drag another formula tool in. Make sure it's connected to the true anchor of our filter tool. In our formula tool, let's select a column, metric type, and we're going to update it with the following formula. Metric type plus open quotations, we'll leave a space, and open brackets, quotations plus unit plus in quotations, close bracket. As we can see, this formula has amended the metric type field to let us retain the unit information, but not in its own column. We're now ready to pivot our data again so that we have a summary of our metrics split by card type. Let's navigate to the Transform tab in our Tools pane and drag the Cross tab tool onto our workspace. In the Configuration pane, we want to select the fields we want to group by. In this case, it's date, metric, metric type, and card type. Our new column headers will come from Interaction. Let's go ahead and select that. And the values for our new columns will come from the Values field. We will want to sum when choosing our method for aggregating values, so go ahead and select that. Let's click Run and compare our inputs and outputs of the Crosstab tool. This is what we had before, and if we click on the output of the Crosstab tool, we can see that business cards and personal cards have been cross-tabbed into their own columns. We now have 2 rows for each month, one for transactions and the others for volumes, split by business cards or personal cards. We're now ready to dynamically write our data. If you haven't already, let's recenter the workspace so we can put our final tool in. Navigate to the In and Out tab at the top and drag Output Data into our workspace. Connect the tools. Click on the caret on the Configuration pane. Select Files and select a file. Select a folder where you want your final files to be output. And let's select a file name. Credit underscore. The reason we've used credit underscore is because we want to dynamically output 2 different files based on each metric type that we have. For this exercise, we don't need to touch any of the options here. However, we will want to tick the take file / table name from field. Make sure the setting here is append suffix to file / table name. And the field containing file name or part of file name we'll want to use is metric, or rather metric type, as our suffix. Optionally, we can choose to keep the metric type field in our output. For this example, I'm going to deselect it as we've already going to have the metric type appended to our credit underscore. And we can see what that looks like in just a moment. We now have our output tool configured to dynamically output two different files segregated into transactions and volumes. Let's go ahead and click Run. Whilst we can't see where our outputs are in Alteryx Designer, we know we've saved it to our outputs file. If we open File Explorer and drag that into our view, we can see that we have two files, credit transactions and credit volumes.